What if I told you that the glamorous, poised, and seemingly untouchable Meghan Markle, long admired by millions for her rise from Hollywood actress to Duchess of Sussex, had a secret that could shock the world? A secret so explosive that it could shatter the carefully curated image she's maintained for years, unravel the narrative spun by the media, and force the royal family into a corner they never imagined. It sounds like a plot straight out of a blockbuster movie, but this is no fiction. This is what MI6 allegedly captured on tape, and the footage is now being whispered about behind closed doors in London, Hollywood, and Paris. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. We are about to take you inside a story few have dared to discuss openly. A story that begins on the sun-drenched red carpet of the Cannes Film Festival. A story that intersects with Hollywood's most controversial figures, and a story that, until now, has remained hidden from the public eye. This isn't about rumors or tabloids. This is about intelligence agencies, secret surveillance, and a series of events that could redefine the way the world sees Meghan Markle, and perhaps even Prince Harry. Imagine the cameras flashing, the music thundering, the perfume of champagne in the air, and amidst it all, the calculated smiles and whispers in velvet-lined suites. Cannes has always been a playground for the elite, a stage where glamour meets power. Celebrities arrive in fleets of luxury cars, photographers jostle for the perfect shot, and the gossip flows as freely as the champagne. For Meghan, Cannes was more than just another festival. It was a network, a proving ground, a place where alliances were made, reputations built, and sometimes reputations shattered. And in one of those lavish, dimly lit private suites, she reportedly met with one of Hollywood's most infamous and polarizing figures, Harvey Weinstein. You might be thinking, isn't this just another scandal? Haven't we seen enough Hollywood intrigue, enough whispers about powerful men and vulnerable women? But this isn't like the stories that filled your social media feed last week. The implications of this alleged footage go beyond Hollywood. They strike at the very core of public trust, at the image of Meghan as a poised, independent figure, and even at the foundation of the British monarchy. Because if what MI6 reportedly captured is true, it reveals layers of relationships, strategic decisions, and perhaps compromises that have never been publicly acknowledged. Now, let's be clear. We are not here to sensationalize for the sake of clicks. This story matters because it intersects with real-world stakes, reputational fallout, potential legal consequences, and the personal lives of some of the most scrutinized figures in modern history. Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, the royal family, they are all entangled in this web. And the timing of this alleged release is no accident. MI6, known for its discretion and secrecy, would not act lightly. If this footage is circulating now, there is a reason, and that reason may have far-reaching consequences. Let's rewind a bit. Before Meghan became a duchess, before the cameras followed her every move, she was an actress navigating the labyrinthine corridors of Hollywood, a world full of ambition, opportunity, and peril. She was young, charismatic, and determined. She had dreams, but she also had to navigate the shadowy undercurrents of a system that often rewarded compliance over conscience. In this environment, one misstep could cost a career. One wrong encounter could make headlines in ways no one could control. It is in this world, some claim, that the alleged interactions with Harvey Weinstein occurred, a man who wielded enormous influence over casting decisions, awards, and careers. His presence at Cannes was legendary, his power undeniable. And for those who crossed his path, the stakes could be unimaginable. What makes this story particularly gripping is the alleged involvement of MI6. Why would Britain's premier intelligence agency take an interest in an American actress attending a film festival? Intelligence services do not release material on a whim. They operate with strategy, often years in advance, and always with calculated intent. Some insiders speculate that Meghan's growing influence and eventual entry into the royal family made her a figure of interest. Could the footage have been collected as part of a broader assessment of potential vulnerabilities, associations, or risks? Could it have been a way to document connections that, if revealed, might complicate diplomatic, financial, or political matters? And then there's the video itself. While the details remain classified or heavily redacted in leaked reports, the implications are clear. The footage reportedly captures moments that contrast sharply with Meghan's public persona. Gestures, interactions, whispered conversations, details that, if taken out of context, could provoke shock, disbelief, and controversy. It's the kind of material that fuels endless speculation and debate. But here's the thing. The footage does not simply depict private Hollywood socializing. Allegedly, it portrays a side of Meghan that few expected, a side that intersects with powerful individuals whose reputations are themselves mired in controversy. Now, you may ask, why release it now? Why risk public uproar and media frenzy years after the events allegedly took place? Timing, in cases like this, is everything. Some analysts suggest that this release could be related to ongoing debates about royal security, transparency, or even succession considerations. Others point to Meghan's recent public statements, media appearances, and Netflix ventures as potential catalysts. Whatever the reason, the effect is immediate. The world is abuzz, conversations are heated, and social media is ablaze with speculation. As we peel back the layers of this story, one thing becomes clear: there are multiple narratives at play. One is the story of a young actress navigating a high-stakes world. Another is the narrative of a royal family grappling with unprecedented scrutiny and potential scandal. And yet another is the story of an intelligence agency, operating in the shadows, whose motives may never be fully disclosed. The intersections of these narratives create a tension that is as compelling as it is unsettling. But perhaps the most important question of all is this: how do these alleged events can affect Meghan Markle today, years later, as a duchess and a public figure with global influence? Can personal history, especially one captured in secret by powerful agencies, ever truly be separated from public perception? How does one navigate a life where private moments are subject to global scrutiny, and where the court of public opinion often delivers judgment before the facts are fully known? And now, let's consider the human element. Prince Harry, who has often been portrayed as the protective and loyal partner, may have been entirely unaware of these alleged events. The shock, the betrayal, the emotional turmoil that such revelations could provoke, these are not just abstract ideas. They are lived experiences. What would you do if someone you trusted deeply had a past so controversial, so potentially compromising, that it could change how the world sees you and your family? We are standing at the edge of a story that intertwines celebrity, royalty, and intelligence in ways that few could have anticipated. The footage reportedly held by MI6 is not just a recording. It is a key that could unlock questions about power, influence, trust, and secrecy. Every frame, every interaction carries weight. Every whisper in that suite could have consequences that ripple far beyond Hollywood parties and red carpets. And so, as we begin this journey, keep your eyes and mind open. What you are about to hear, see, and question will challenge assumptions, provoke emotional responses, and perhaps even redefine what you thought you knew about Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, and the forces that operate behind the scenes in both Hollywood and royal circles. What happens behind the glittering lights of the Cannes Film Festival rarely stays behind the lights. For most, Cannes is about red carpets, flashing cameras, and champagne toasts in grand ballrooms overlooking the Mediterranean. But for some, it is a stage where power, influence, and ambition collide in ways the world will never see. And for Meghan Markle, that year in Cannes would mark a moment that, according to insiders and leaked intelligence, would become one of the most scrutinized events of her pre-royal life. Picture it. The French Riviera bathed in golden sunlight, yachts bobbing in the harbor, and celebrities descending in waves of couture gowns, tailored suits, and designer sunglasses. Paparazzi hover like hawks, their cameras clicking relentlessly. Reporters whisper about the arrivals, about the stars, about the potential scandals they hope to catch on tape. Cannes is a spectacle, but it's also a web, one that entangles the famous, the powerful, and the ambitious. Meghan arrived not as a royal yet, not even as someone universally recognized outside Hollywood circles. But she had ambition, charm, and an ability to navigate a world dominated by glitter and secrets. The opening night gala was a blur of luxury. Crystal chandeliers, live orchestras, champagne fountains. Every detail meticulously curated for spectacle. But behind the cameras, behind the polite smiles and staged photographs, there were meetings happening that no journalist would ever catch in print. Whispers, introductions, private conversations in suites shielded from public view. And it was in one of these suites that Meghan Markle allegedly crossed paths with Harvey Weinstein, a man whose reputation for power, influence, and manipulation was already notorious among Hollywood insiders. The details of the alleged interaction are, understandably, murky. Intelligence insiders suggest that MI6 had been monitoring the event, not necessarily to catch Meghan herself, but because of her proximity to high-profile individuals and potential connections to figures whose actions could affect international reputation and security. Cannes, after all, is not just a festival. It's a meeting ground for global elites. Deals are made in whispers, favors are exchanged under chandeliers, and relationships are formed that can later have unforeseen consequences. What made Meghan's presence so intriguing to observers was not her star power. It was the combination of her charisma, her visibility, and her connections. By this point, Meghan had achieved a certain level of fame, appearing in television series and making waves in Hollywood circles. She was intelligent, poised, and capable of holding her own among seasoned actors and producers. But with ambition comes scrutiny. And when powerful men like Weinstein were involved, scrutiny often came with a dangerous edge. The night of the gala, insiders report, Meghan was introduced to various figures in private suites, including a few high-ranking entertainment executives. Her interactions were observed with intense interest, not just by agents and publicists, but, according to leaked reports, by intelligence operatives positioned discreetly throughout the festival. These operatives weren't there to spy on celebrities for gossip. They were tasked with gathering information on potential vulnerabilities, associations, and situations that could later become politically or socially sensitive. As the evening progressed, Meghan moved through the suite, laughing, conversing, and navigating the treacherous waters of Hollywood networking. Harvey Weinstein, known for his predatory reputation even at the time, allegedly took an interest. Some sources suggest there was a subtle power dynamic at play, one that could place anyone in an uncomfortable or compromising situation if not handled carefully. And according to intelligence insiders, this is precisely what MI6 aimed to capture. Unguarded moments, interactions that revealed alliances or potential liabilities, and the nuances of social maneuvering that rarely make it into public awareness. It's important to note that Cannes is not just about surface appearances. Every movement, every handshake, every whispered word in a private room can carry weight. Security measures, cameras, and staff are designed to ensure safety, but the festival is also notorious for its exclusivity. Private events occur off the main red carpet, in rooms behind closed doors, in suites overlooking the sea, or on yachts anchored nearby. These are the moments when public personas are tested, when reputations can be bolstered or damaged. By the end of the evening, Meghan had reportedly navigated the networking gauntlet with skill, charm, and poise. Yet, according to leaked intelligence reports, the interactions that took place in one particular suite would later attract attention for reasons that had nothing to do with her career. MI6 files suggest that certain gestures, exchanges, and behaviors were documented with an eye toward understanding potential leverage, risk, or influence. What might seem like a casual evening to an observer on Instagram or in the press coverage could, behind closed doors, represent something far more consequential. The media at the time, of course, saw nothing unusual. Articles highlighted Meghan's fashion choices, her elegant entrance, and her charm on the red carpet. The photographers captured her smiling, her gowns flowing in the Mediterranean breeze, her interaction with other celebrities perfectly staged. The public, in turn, absorbed these images as part of the narrative of a rising star. But hidden layers existed beneath the curated facade. And it is these layers, the moments of candid interaction, of whispered conversation, of subtle power plays, that the MI6 footage allegedly revealed. So why does this matter now, years later? Why would intelligence services choose to release, or leak, footage from a private event long before Meghan married into the royal family? Timing, sources suggest, is everything. The release may be tied to ongoing considerations about public perception, influence, or even financial negotiations related to the couple's media ventures. By highlighting events that occurred in a controlled but private environment, the footage could reshape narratives about trust, discretion, and the choices made by individuals before entering the royal sphere. And the controversy doesn't end with the alleged footage itself. There are questions about interpretation, context, and intent. Was the footage meant to incriminate, to warn, or simply to document? Intelligence sources are notoriously opaque. The implications, however, are unavoidable. A video capturing intimate or compromising moments, even if ambiguous, is enough to spark global speculation, political tension, and a storm of media scrutiny. This, of course, raises another critical point: the human element. Meghan Markle was not merely a subject of intelligence interest. She was a person navigating an intensely complex world. The decisions she made that evening, her responses to others, and her ability to manage perception all contributed to the image captured by both the media and, allegedly, intelligence agencies. For Prince Harry, who would later enter this narrative, the retrospective discovery of such footage carries emotional weight. Betrayal, confusion, and concern for public fallout are not abstract ideas. They are deeply personal experiences that shape relationships and public perception alike. By the end of the Cannes Festival, Meghan had ostensibly achieved a successful night: charm displayed, connections made, and a public image polished. Yet behind the smiles, behind the laughter, and behind the champagne toasts, a different story was being recorded, a story of observation, calculation, and surveillance that would later intersect dramatically with her personal and public life. MI6, according to sources, had captured interactions that few outside the suite would ever witness, interactions that would later become a touchstone for controversy, speculation, and debate about her suitability, judgment, and alliances. As the festival concluded and the world moved on to its next spectacle, Meghan continued her rise. Yet, unknown to most, the recordings made that evening would quietly lie in intelligence files, waiting for a time when their relevance could be fully realized. These were not paparazzi photos or gossip columns. These were detailed observations, captured in high definition, with an eye for nuance, power dynamics, and potential implications. And when these recordings eventually surfaced, or were hinted at, the consequences were immediate, profound, and far-reaching. So here we stand at the precipice of the story. The red carpets, the yachts, the chandeliers, they were the surface. What MI6 allegedly recorded is the undercurrent, the secret narrative hidden beneath glamour and optics. And as the story unfolds, we will explore exactly what occurred in that suite, how it intersected with power, influence, and ambition, and what it means for the individuals involved, both then and now. Harvey Weinstein. The name alone evokes a complex mix of fear, intrigue, and outrage. By the time Meghan Markle attended the Cannes Film Festival that year, Weinstein was already a figure whose power in Hollywood was legendary and infamous. He could make careers or end them with a whisper, a phone call, or a simple shake of his head. And he wielded that influence with an intensity that few dared to confront. To many, he was untouchable. To some, he was a predator hiding behind red carpets, gala events, and the glitz of Cannes. And for Meghan Markle, her alleged interaction with him in that sun-drenched Riviera suite would become a key point in a story that would ripple across continents and years. Picture Cannes not just as a festival, but as a chessboard. Each player, each actor, producer, and influencer is a piece strategically moving to gain advantage, avoid missteps, and secure their place in the hierarchy. Weinstein was not a pawn. He was a king in this game, a figure whose moves could topple the ambitions of countless hopefuls. To be in the same room as him was a mix of opportunity and risk. And according to intelligence insiders, that room became a focal point for observation, with operatives noting every gesture, every exchange, every subtle nuance. Weinstein's influence at Cannes went beyond his title as a producer. He had cultivated a network of loyalists, assistants, and enablers who ensured that his presence at these events commanded both attention and control. In the suites of the festival, it was said that he could orchestrate introductions, sway decisions, and manipulate perceptions with the ease of a conductor leading an orchestra. It was a world where power was exercised silently, invisibly, and often insidiously. Those who understood the rules flourished. Those who misstepped, even slightly, were at risk of professional and personal fallout. So how did Meghan, a rising actress at the time, navigate this environment? Intelligence reports and anecdotal accounts suggest that she displayed a combination of charm, intelligence, and caution. She was aware that the glitz and glamour could conceal danger. Every smile, every handshake, every conversational turn had to be measured. But even with her poise, some moments were bound to reveal cracks, subtle signs, or gestures that could later be interpreted in ways she never intended. And that, according to MI6 insiders, is precisely what was captured in the surveillance. Weinstein, on the other hand, was reportedly aware of Meghan's rising visibility. Some sources claim that he saw her as someone who could advance his interests, a connection worth cultivating, while others suggest he viewed her as an unknown variable, someone whose rise in prominence might intersect with Hollywood and political circles in ways he could exploit. The alleged interactions at Cannes, then, were more than socializing. They were power dynamics in motion, subtle negotiations, and exchanges loaded with unspoken consequences. For outsiders watching the festival unfold, these details were invisible. The public saw Meghan arriving in gowns that shimmered under the French sun, photographers capturing every step, social media abuzz with commentary on her appearance and poise. Behind closed doors, however, the dynamics were far more complex. Sources indicate that Weinstein's presence in the suite commanded attention, influencing conversations, controlling access, and creating an environment where the stakes were extraordinarily high. One misstep, a misread gesture, an untimely comment, could have repercussions far beyond the room. MI6's alleged interest in these interactions adds another layer of intrigue. Intelligence operatives, according to leaked files, observed the suite with precision. They documented movements, interactions, and exchanges with a focus that went beyond casual surveillance. Every nuanced gesture, every glance, every subtle word carried weight. It wasn't gossip they were after, it was information. Information that could be relevant to influence, vulnerability, or potential risks tied to figures who would eventually intersect with the royal family. And then there's the psychological component. Weinstein, with his reputation and power, created an environment charged with subtle intimidation. People who were otherwise confident could become cautious, self-conscious, or overly accommodating. The way Meghan navigated this pressure, how she maintained composure, and how she responded to subtle cues, all of it was reportedly captured in detail. MI6 files, according to insiders, suggest that these recordings went beyond mere observation of presence. They analyzed behavior, response patterns, and situational dynamics that could be relevant to future assessments. It's crucial to understand that this was not an isolated incident in Hollywood or at Cannes. Weinstein had a long history of influence that extended to award ceremonies, industry parties, and film markets. His power was reinforced by both fear and admiration. To be in his orbit was to be both visible and vulnerable. For Meghan, the stakes were different from other actresses because of her eventual trajectory into the British royal family, a path that intelligence agencies would undoubtedly view as strategically significant. But even with all the dynamics at play, Meghan reportedly held her own. She maintained composure, navigated introductions with precision, and engaged in conversations that demonstrated both intelligence and social acumen. Yet, as intelligence operatives observed, there were moments, micro-expressions, fleeting gestures, that would later be scrutinized in extraordinary detail. Every glance, every pause, every subtle smile became data. Data that could, years later, be interpreted, framed, and potentially weaponized. The tension in that suite, according to insiders, was almost palpable. Weinstein exerting influence, operatives documenting behavior, Meghan navigating a delicate balance of charm and caution, all set against the backdrop of one of the world's most glamorous festivals. The juxtaposition was stark, glamour on the surface, strategy and surveillance beneath. And it is within this tension that the story becomes both compelling and unsettling. What makes the alleged footage particularly explosive is not merely the presence of high-profile individuals. It's the interplay of power, perception, and potential consequence. Meghan's actions, Weinstein's influence, and MI6's observation created a scenario where multiple narratives intersected. Public perception, private behavior, and intelligence assessment all converged, creating a complex web of information that would remain hidden for years. The psychological stakes cannot be overstated. For Meghan, who would later marry into a family scrutinized more closely than any celebrity. Every interaction at Cannes was a potential pivot point. Every choice could influence perception, both in Hollywood and, eventually, in the public eye of the United Kingdom. And according to sources, the way she conducted herself in the suite, the diplomacy, the charm, the subtle assertiveness, was exactly what made her a figure of interest for intelligence monitoring. As the festival progressed, the suite interactions reportedly continued, with subtle shifts in power dynamics, exchanges of information, and gestures that would later be analyzed in detail. Operatives watching from discrete locations documented behavior, noting not just actions, but reactions, tone, and subtle cues. These recordings, when later referenced in MI6 files, painted a picture not of a scandal in the traditional tabloid sense, but of a moment of intense observation and high-stakes social maneuvering. And then, the twist. Some insiders claim that certain sequences captured in the suite suggested more than just social interaction. There were moments of apparent tension, moments where influence was exerted, and moments that, taken out of context, could appear compromising. These are the moments that have fueled speculation, debates, and, ultimately, the shocking interest of both the intelligence community and the public once the leaks emerged. So what does this mean in the bigger picture? Weinstein's influence at Cannes, coupled with Meghan's presence and the alleged surveillance, created a perfect storm. It was a collision of celebrity, power, and observation, a combination that few could navigate without risk. And while the public saw only the glamour, the intelligence files suggest a more intricate, high-stakes game was being played behind closed doors. As we continue to unravel this story, one thing becomes clear: power dynamics, subtle influence, and the presence of individuals like Harvey Weinstein can have repercussions that extend far beyond a single evening or event. The interactions captured in that suite would later intersect with Meghan's life, Prince Harry's life, and the global perception of both. The stakes were no longer confined to Cannes. They were global, personal, and politically significant. Imagine for a moment that the world's most secretive intelligence agency, MI6, is paying attention to an American actress attending a film festival on the French Riviera. It seems implausible at first glance. After all, what does Meghan Markle, still years away from becoming a duchess, have to do with Britain's national security or global intelligence operations? Yet insiders and leaked sources suggest that her presence in Cannes, and more specifically her interactions with powerful figures like Harvey Weinstein, drew the attention of one of the world's most discreet spy organizations. And the implications of that attention are nothing short of astonishing. MI6 does not operate lightly. It is an agency built on precision, discretion, and strategic foresight. When it monitors someone, it is rarely casual. Surveillance is meticulous, calculated, and purposeful. And in the case of Meghan Markle at Cannes, intelligence insiders claim that the agency's interest was tied not only to her personal interactions, but also to her potential influence on individuals who could impact international perception, diplomacy, and media narratives. This wasn't just about celebrities. It was about influence, networks, and potential leverage. The reasoning, according to sources, is layered. Meghan Markle, even before marrying Prince Harry, was a rising figure with access to Hollywood power brokers, international media platforms, and influential social circles. Intelligence analysts reportedly viewed her as a person whose connections could intersect with political, cultural, and financial interests critical to the UK. The mere presence of MI6 operatives that can suggest that they were not merely observing social interactions, they were assessing influence, risk, and potential vulnerabilities. Consider the environment. Cannes is not just a film festival. It is a convergence point for individuals whose power extends across industries and countries. Deals are brokered in suites hidden from the public eye, alliances formed in whispered conversations, and reputations built or broken based on subtle gestures. For MI6, monitoring such a nexus of influence allows them to map networks, identify potential threats or opportunities, and gather intelligence that could be relevant to national or international interests. Meghan Markle, entering these circles with poise and ambition, became a person of interest precisely because she could traverse these networks with ease. Leaked documents suggest that the agency's surveillance went beyond surface-level observation. They reportedly analyzed behavioral patterns, noting interactions that could indicate influence, persuasion, or strategic alignment. Every handshake, every pause, every glance was considered data. And while the recordings are said to be heavily redacted in public leaks, sources claim that the level of detail captured is extraordinary, enough to allow analysts to reconstruct conversations, intentions, and the subtle dynamics of power in the room. Why would MI6 focus so intently on interactions involving Harvey Weinstein? Beyond the obvious, his infamous reputation and potential for influence, the agency may have seen him as a gateway to broader networks that intersected with politics, media, and international affairs. Intelligence agencies routinely monitor individuals whose influence could affect public perception, policy, or global relationships. Weinstein, with his reach in Hollywood and connections to political donors, was precisely such a figure. And Meghan's interactions with him, whether perceived as innocuous or strategic, became a matter of interest. One source with knowledge of intelligence procedures explained, "It's not necessarily about the individual themselves. It's about who they connect with, who they influence, and what information might pass through them. Every interaction has potential significance. You observe patterns, you note behavior, and you assess risk. Even small gestures can be meaningful. And herein lies the tension. For Meghan Markle, what was likely a night of networking, socializing, and career building becomes, in another frame, a high-stakes intelligence observation. Every smile, every nod, every conversational tactic is captured, analyzed, and stored. What seems trivial to a casual observer can, in the world of espionage, become highly significant. Leaked MI6 sources also suggest that the agency's interest was heightened by Meghan's subsequent trajectory. Her relationship with Prince Harry, though years away from public revelation, was reportedly on the radar of analysts who understood the potential global impact of a marriage into the royal family. The intelligence apparatus, always attentive to potential leverage points, reportedly assessed that interactions in Cannes could be relevant in future evaluations of risk, influence, and public perception. Some might ask, is it ethical for an intelligence agency to monitor private social interactions at a festival? The answer is complex. Agencies like MI6 operate in gray areas, guided by national interest rather than personal morality. Their mandate includes safeguarding the nation, anticipating threats, and understanding networks of influence that could affect diplomatic, cultural, or financial arenas. From that perspective, observing someone like Meghan Markle, who navigated these networks with skill and visibility, is consistent with operational priorities. But there is also an element of timing and strategy. Intelligence agencies do not leak or release footage without consideration. The alleged timing of this release raises questions. Some analysts speculate that the footage, now surfacing, may have been held in reserve for years, only to be released, or hinted at, when it could have maximum impact. Whether the goal was to influence public perception, provide leverage, or expose previously hidden behaviors remains speculative, but the effect is undeniable. The world is now confronted with a narrative that challenges perceptions of Meghan Markle, Hollywood influence, and the intersection of personal choices with public consequence. MI6's involvement also underscores the intricate intersection of celebrity and global affairs. It's a world where personal and professional spheres collide, where a single interaction can have ripple effects that extend far beyond the immediate environment. Meghan Markle, by navigating these spaces with intelligence and charisma, became both a subject of admiration and scrutiny. And for intelligence operatives, the goal is clear: observe, document, analyze, and assess potential significance, regardless of public perception. Another layer, revealed in sources familiar with intelligence protocols, is the focus on context. Surveillance does not merely record actions, it assesses intent. Was a gesture a friendly nod or a calculated alignment? Was a conversation casual or indicative of broader ambitions? These are the questions analysts seek to answer when reconstructing events captured in private spaces. And according to insiders, the footage from Cannes allegedly provided ample material for such assessments, capturing nuances that would later fuel speculation, analysis, and controversy. The psychological dimension is also worth noting. For those under observation, the awareness, whether conscious or unconscious, of being watched can influence behavior. Meghan's poise, social intelligence, and careful navigation of interactions may have mitigated potential risks, but intelligence agencies analyze both what is said and unsaid, both what is visible and what is concealed. Every microexpression, every subtle hesitation becomes a data point. In this context, can becomes more than a festival. It becomes a case study in power, influence, and surveillance. Finally, consider the implications. The involvement of MI6 suggests that this story is not merely about scandal or celebrity. It is about networks of power, intersections of influence, and the ways in which personal and professional actions are monitored, documented, and potentially leveraged. Meghan Markle's experience at Cannes, observed by one of the world's most secretive agencies, illustrates how private moments can have public consequences and how choices made in one context can resonate years later in entirely different arenas. As we continue, it becomes clear that the MI6 angle is not merely a footnote. It is central to understanding the complexity of this story. The agency's surveillance, documentation, and assessment transformed what could have been a simple evening at a festival into a matter of international intrigue. And the footage allegedly captured during these interactions would later intersect with Hollywood power, royal life, and global perception in ways that few could have anticipated. What if I told you that an event, captured in secret, could shatter decades of public perception in an instant? Imagine a recording, hidden away for years, now surfacing to reveal interactions so private, so carefully monitored, that the implications stretch far beyond gossip columns or celebrity rumor. This is the alleged reality behind the MI6 footage of Meghan Markle at the Cannes Film Festival, the first glimpse of which reportedly shows her navigating a world of power, influence, and subtle danger, long before she ever set foot in the royal sphere. The footage, according to leaked intelligence sources, is not like the casual celebrity videos you might stumble upon on social media. This is high-definition, professionally monitored material, captured from angles that could see both facial expressions and nuanced body language. Operatives reportedly focused not just on presence, but on behavior, tone, and subtle shifts in interaction. Every gesture, every pause, every glance was recorded with precision, allowing analysts to interpret the social dynamics in real time. The first moments of the video reportedly depict Meghan entering a private suite filled with influential figures, including Harvey Weinstein. The room is softly lit, the background a blend of luxury furnishings and discreet opulence. Glasses of champagne glint under the chandelier, laughter echoes, and the hum of multiple conversations fills the space. The atmosphere is intoxicatingly glamorous, yet, as intelligence sources suggest, it is also highly charged with subtle tension. Power dynamics are at play. Every participant is calculating, every move carries weight, and every interaction is potentially consequential. As Meghan navigates the room, analysts claim she demonstrates a level of social intelligence that is both impressive and, in some respects, calculated. She smiles at certain individuals while nodding politely to others, engaging in conversation that is attentive yet measured. The operative's focus is reportedly on her ability to balance charm with caution, to engage without overexposing herself, and to navigate complex dynamics with grace. In other words, they were watching a masterclass in social maneuvering unfold under scrutiny. What makes the footage particularly intriguing is the alleged presence of micro-moments, gestures and expressions that seem insignificant to an observer but, under intelligence analysis, reveal subtle shifts in power and influence. A slight tilt of the head, a fleeting frown, a momentary hesitation before speaking. These are the details MI6 reportedly captured. And it is these micro-moments that, when pieced together, tell a story far more nuanced and compelling than a red carpet photograph ever could. Weinstein's interactions, as captured in the footage, are reportedly equally telling. His presence dominates the room not through overt aggression, but through influence. Conversations reportedly pivot around his gaze, his timing, his subtle cues, indicators of the power he wields. Those in the room, including Meghan, are aware of his influence, yet they continue to engage with him. Observers later noted how Meghan balances attentiveness with independence, a combination that analysts reportedly found noteworthy, if not entirely predictable. The psychological element in the video cannot be overstated. Being monitored, even covertly, has a way of altering behavior. Yet according to MI6 reports, Meghan appears to operate with a level of composure that belies the stakes. She is aware, perhaps instinctively, of the need to maintain poise while navigating individuals whose power could be both enabling and threatening. This duality, visibility and vulnerability, is central to understanding why the footage has generated such interest among intelligence circles and the public alike. One particularly striking element in the footage reportedly involves a moment of subtle negotiation. Without overt discussion, Meghan is seen engaging in conversation that demonstrates both awareness and discretion. Observers have noted that her responses are measured, her body language controlled, and her tone both engaging and cautious. This combination, analysts suggest, highlights a capacity for social intelligence that makes her interactions noteworthy in the context of surveillance. But the footage also reportedly captures more ambiguous moments. There are instances where Meghan and Weinstein appear to share a private exchange, gestures, expressions, and whispered comments that, while not explicitly incriminating, carry layers of interpretive potential. It is in these moments that MI6's interest reportedly intensifies. Every nuance, every subtle shift in the room's energy is analyzed, cataloged, and later referenced in reports evaluating behavior, associations, and influence. The broader context of the suite also matters. According to sources, other high-profile figures were present, each contributing to a complex web of social dynamics. Laughter, polite conversation, strategic alignment. These elements create a network of interaction that, when combined with surveillance analysis, provides intelligence officers with insights far beyond what public images or interviews could convey. The room, while superficially glamorous and carefree, is in reality a locus of high-stakes social navigation. What is especially notable about the leaked video is how it contrasts with Meghan's public persona. On the red carpet, she presents a polished, controlled image designed for mass consumption. In the suite, however, she is navigating a more complex social landscape, where influence, subtle power plays, and personal discretion intersect. Intelligence analysts reportedly found this duality compelling, a figure publicly curated for admiration, privately maneuvering with strategic awareness among influential peers. The public release, or leak, of this footage is another layer in the story. Analysts speculate on the timing and motive, suggesting several possibilities: political leverage, shaping public perception, or even preemptive reputation management before major public events involving Meghan and Prince Harry. Regardless of intent, the effect is undeniable. The world now has a glimpse of a private reality that contrasts sharply with the public narrative, generating debate, speculation, and emotional reaction on a global scale. Yet even with all the analysis, some elements remain deliberately ambiguous. The footage does not explicitly document wrongdoing. What it does document are moments of interaction, gestures, and exchanges that are open to interpretation. In the hands of analysts, journalists, and commentators, these moments become points of discussion, conjecture, and, inevitably, controversy. The power of surveillance lies not only in what is captured, but in how it is later interpreted, framed, and disseminated. The impact of the video is already visible in media and social discourse. Headlines speculate, forums debate, and social media explodes with opinions ranging from disbelief to outrage. What was once private, captured under the guise of intelligence monitoring, is now part of the public conversation. And as this conversation unfolds, the stakes escalate, particularly for Meghan Markle, whose public identity is tightly managed, and for Prince Harry, whose loyalty and protective instincts are reportedly being tested in ways he never anticipated. In the midst of this scrutiny, one thing is clear. The leaked video is more than just footage of a celebrity event. It is a study in influence, discretion, and the collision of private behavior with public consequence. It provides a rare lens into how individuals navigate high-stakes social environments, how intelligence agencies assess potential vulnerabilities, and how moments once confined to private suites can echo across continents and years. Before Meghan Markle became a household name as the Duchess of Sussex, before she stepped onto the global stage of royal scrutiny, she was navigating a world that demanded ambition, charm, and a certain ruthlessness. The glittering yet treacherous realm of Hollywood. And it was in this crucible of fame, influence, and relentless competition that the woman we now know as Meghan Markle honed the skills, poise, and strategic instincts that would later define her public persona. Hollywood is often portrayed as a land of glamour, opportunity, and dreams fulfilled. But for those who spend years attempting to rise within its hierarchy, it is just as often a world of calculated interactions, veiled agendas, and invisible gatekeepers who determine who succeeds and who falters. In this environment, visibility is currency, connections are power, and any misstep can have consequences that extend far beyond a single audition or a poorly received film. Meghan's journey through this world was marked by the very human mix of ambition and caution, resilience and calculation. The years leading up to Cannes were critical. Meghan was building her career, gaining recognition through television roles and small film appearances. But she was also learning the unwritten rules of Hollywood: who to trust, which doors to knock on, and which relationships were worth nurturing. Intelligence insiders and Hollywood insiders alike suggest that Meghan approached her career with a rare combination of charm and discipline, aware that each interaction, however seemingly trivial, could ripple into opportunity or risk. Every cocktail party, every industry event, every casual meeting was a chess move in a much larger game. It is within this context that her attendance at Cannes takes on deeper significance. Meghan was no longer just a rising actress. She was a figure operating in the upper echelons of Hollywood, intersecting with powerful producers, influential agents, and key industry players. Her network extended beyond mere entertainment circles. It reached into areas of finance, media, and international attention, all of which were monitored, sometimes overtly, sometimes covertly, by actors in power, both public and private. Harvey Weinstein, of course, was one such figure, and understanding Meghan's interactions with him requires a look at the broader Hollywood ecosystem. Weinstein's influence was multifaceted. He could champion a career, open doors to prestigious projects, or simultaneously close them with a whisper. But his presence at Cannes wasn't just professional. It was an assertion of power, a signal to all who attended that influence was concentrated in his orbit. And for Meghan, navigating this orbit required a delicate balance. Charm without overexposure, attentiveness without submission, strategic engagement without compromise. According to intelligence reports, the subtlety with which she handled these interactions was noted and analyzed, not only for her comportment, but for what it revealed about her judgment, awareness, and capacity to handle high-stakes social environments. Yet Hollywood was not merely about power dynamics with a single individual. It was about positioning, visibility, and reputation management. Meghan's career trajectory demonstrates a careful understanding of this triad. She chose roles strategically, attended events that maximized exposure, and cultivated an image that balanced ambition with relatability. Social intelligence, insiders suggest, was her greatest asset. She understood the importance of perception, the way interactions are interpreted both by industry peers and by the public. Every handshake, every smile, every exchange of conversation in these circles contributed to a persona that would eventually resonate far beyond Hollywood. But navigating Hollywood was never straightforward. The environment was rife with contradictions. Glamour coexisted with manipulation. Opportunity was intertwined with risk. Recognition was accompanied by scrutiny. Meghan, according to those familiar with her early career, displayed both awareness and adaptability, qualities that would later serve her in navigating the even more perilous world of royalty. The Cannes footage, in this light, is more than a snapshot. It is a microcosm of these dynamics, a single evening capturing the tension, calculation, and stakes that defined her professional life before she became a duchess. This chapter of her life also reveals the duality that would become a hallmark of her public image. On one hand, Meghan was approachable, poised, and charismatic, capable of engaging with a diverse array of figures with grace. On the other hand, she was strategic, observant, and protective of her boundaries. It is precisely this duality, the ability to charm while calculating, to engage while preserving autonomy, that the MI6 footage allegedly captured. Analysts reportedly noted these behaviors, not as evidence of scandal in the traditional sense, but as indications of a figure navigating complex social and professional terrain with exceptional skill. And yet, there were also moments of vulnerability. Hollywood is, after all, a world where even the most polished individuals face pressure, judgment, and exposure. In the suite at Cannes, according to intelligence sources, Meghan exhibited brief, subtle cues of tension, micro-expressions that could suggest awareness of the stakes, recognition of power dynamics, or the mental load of maintaining composure under scrutiny. For MI6, these were not casual observations. They were data points, valuable for understanding behavior, temperament, and potential responses to high-pressure environments. Her Hollywood experience, however, cannot be viewed in isolation. It is intrinsically linked to the trajectory that would bring her into the public eye on a global scale and eventually into the royal family. The skills she honed, navigating influence, managing perception, balancing engagement with caution, were precisely the skills that would later define her role as a duchess. In many ways, Kim was a proving ground, a condensed test of the abilities that would later be required on a much larger stage, with far greater scrutiny and exponentially higher stakes. Moreover, the Hollywood environment fostered connections that, intentionally or not, intersected with intelligence and global influence networks. Producers, financiers, and high-profile figures often operate across sectors, where social, professional, and even political spheres overlap. It is within this confluence of networks that Meghan's interactions gain broader significance. MI6's alleged surveillance suggests that it was not simply about observing a celebrity in a suite. It was about understanding how she engaged with power, influence, and potential leverage points. Each conversation, each glance, each micro-gesture carried implications that extended beyond the immediate social setting. The footage reportedly demonstrates that Meghan navigated these interactions with remarkable dexterity. She engaged with influential figures, responded to subtle cues, and maintained composure under observation, all while projecting confidence and authenticity. This dual capability, performing with poise while remaining strategically aware, is what intelligence analysts reportedly found notable. It is also what makes the footage compelling to a global audience. It is a glimpse into the human capacity to navigate high-stakes environments where influence, reputation, and power intersect. But Hollywood was also a world of contradictions. The same networks that offered opportunity could create vulnerability. The same connections that enabled visibility could expose private moments to scrutiny. Meghan's life at this stage was a delicate balancing act, a constant negotiation between ambition, self-preservation, and the unpredictable dynamics of influence. The MI6 footage, according to insiders, captures not only her skill but the stakes inherent in this balancing act, a reminder that every gesture, however small, can carry profound consequence. And now, as the public catches its first glimpse of this footage years later, the impact is immediate. The footage not only challenges assumptions about Meghan's early life, but also illuminates the complex interplay between personal ambition, professional navigation, and external scrutiny. It provides context for her later decisions, her relationships, and the way she managed her public image in the transition from Hollywood to royalty. Yet, as compelling as these early career observations are, they represent only a prelude. The interactions, exchanges, and subtle dynamics captured in the suite at Cannes are just the beginning of a story that escalates dramatically when the global stage becomes involved, and when private life intersects with intelligence, influence, and the royal family. The next revelations, as we will explore, move beyond Hollywood and into a realm where stakes are measured not just in careers, but in reputation, trust, and the global spotlight. When most people think of Meghan Markle's journey from Hollywood actress to Duchess of Sussex, the story usually focuses on glamour, media frenzy, and the romance with Prince Harry. What rarely gets discussed, until now, is the perspective of the royal family itself, the private, measured, and at times, intensely strategic responses of a centuries-old institution suddenly confronted with unprecedented circumstances. According to insiders and leaked sources, the alleged MI6 footage of Meghan's interactions was more than a curiosity. It was a potential catalyst for a storm that the palace had never anticipated. Imagine the palace, with its centuries of tradition, etiquette, and carefully maintained image, suddenly confronted with a dossier containing private recordings of a future royal figure. The material itself, insiders suggest, was not immediately scandalous in the tabloid sense, but it carried enormous implications for reputation, perception, and trust. Every member of the family, from advisors to senior royals, reportedly debated how to respond. Should it be contained, ignored, or strategically addressed? The stakes were immense. In the royal world, perception is reality, and the introduction of potentially compromising material could ripple far beyond the immediate circle. Prince Harry, in particular, was reportedly unaware of the full scope of the intelligence collected on Meghan before their relationship became public. Sources suggest that he trusted her implicitly, relying on the same emotional and personal cues that any partner might. Yet, the revelation, or even the hint, of surveillance, observation, and private footage introduced a complex emotional and psychological layer to the situation. The question was not merely about personal loyalty. It was about the delicate balance between private life and public duty. Palace advisors, according to leaked information, engaged in intensive discussions regarding both immediate and long-term implications. The primary concern: how would this material, if it surfaced publicly, affect the reputation of the monarchy? The institution has survived wars, political scandals, and public controversies, but the modern age, dominated by social media, 24/7 news cycles, and instantaneous global scrutiny, posed an entirely new challenge. Intelligence leaks from MI6, however subtle or controlled, represented a potential breach in the careful architecture of royal image management. Some sources suggest that early reactions within the palace were cautious, strategic, and emotionally charged. Senior aides reportedly briefed key figures on the potential implications, emphasizing not only the content itself, but also the optics of its existence. The royal family is, above all, a symbol. The public sees traditions, pageantry, and ceremonial continuity, but behind the scenes, every decision is measured for both immediate and historical impact. For Meghan, who was on the cusp of joining this world, the stakes could not have been higher. What makes this scenario particularly compelling is the tension between personal loyalty and institutional duty. Prince Harry, as a future senior royal, is expected to navigate both. The alleged surveillance, captured in private settings, presented him with a dilemma: how to reconcile his personal trust and affection for Meghan with the potential risk that undisclosed private actions could pose to the institution he represents. Intelligence insiders indicate that this created a unique form of stress, one that would later influence his decision-making, public statements, and strategic alliances. The royal family's response, according to insiders, also involved careful monitoring of media narratives. Even without the footage being public, whispers, leaks, and subtle intelligence cues demanded that the palace anticipate how journalists, commentators, and social media users might react. Preemptive damage control, discreet inquiries, and subtle interventions were reportedly underway long before the public ever knew of Can or MI6's involvement. Every decision was weighted against potential repercussions, both in terms of reputation and personal dynamics within the family. One particularly intriguing aspect of the response was the consideration of public perception versus private knowledge. The palace has always maintained a dual approach: outwardly, projecting stability, dignity, and unity; inwardly, addressing crises with strategic discretion. The alleged MI6 footage challenged this balance. On one hand, the content needed to be assessed privately. On the other, any hint of a leak could trigger global scrutiny. The royal family, accustomed to traditional forms of media management, faced an entirely new dynamic where private information could surface globally in an instant. Emotionally, insiders suggest that there was a spectrum of responses. Some members reportedly expressed shock, concern, and disbelief at the idea that an intelligence agency had collected footage of a future family member in a social setting. Others saw the material as a necessary precaution, part of the broader intelligence landscape that supports the institution's security and longevity. Within this tension lay the seeds of anxiety, debate, and, ultimately, the careful orchestration of responses that would unfold as Meghan's relationship with Harry progressed. Another key dimension is timing. The palace reportedly considered the implications not only in terms of immediate exposure, but also in relation to Meghan and Harry's eventual public roles. Any disclosure, intentional or accidental, could coincide with public appearances, media campaigns, or personal milestones. This awareness of timing, insiders note, underscores the meticulous planning and calculated foresight that defines the royal approach to both internal and external crises. Every decision was strategic, every word measured, and every move considered for long-term impact. The intelligence angle adds yet another layer of complexity. MI6's surveillance was not merely about observing social interactions. It was about understanding influence, networks, and potential leverage. The existence of this material meant that the royal family had to anticipate not just public reaction, but the potential for strategic exploitation. Intelligence professionals reportedly briefed the palace on worst-case scenarios, including potential leaks, media framing, and the ripple effects on international perception.